Welcome to the Pitstop Power Hour, presented by Race 92, where we bring you up to speed on everything that is anything in the motorsports universe. What's up, guys? This is our second episode, sophomore slump.
Let's hope it's not a slump.
I have a question, Jacob. Are you still bloated?
No.
Good.
No, the holidays are over.
We've all been hitting the gym, our New Year's resolutions.
No, I'm not even going to pretend this year. I'm not going to stick to any kind of exercise or health plan. So I'm just going to keep going the way I am.
Mountain biking once again, starting this spring.
We'll see. So we are recording the Tuesday after New Year's weekend. How was you guys' New Year's?
It was good.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Quiet and
How was
good.
yours? Yeah. Socially distanced, responsible.
Oh, yeah, very responsible. You guys know me, I was extremely responsible this New Year's weekend.
I won't even ask.
All right, so jumping into the episode. Should we just get into the news?
I think we start with the news.
All righty, well, the first news that we have is Supercross is starting next Saturday. That's January 16th.
Yay.
Super pumped. I think for the first time ever, it's not starting in California. Obviously, California is shut down because of their government and the pandemic. Surprisingly, this Supercross series, I don't think a single round is in California this year, which is insane. That's like having the IndyCar season go without the Indy 500 happening. So that's kind of rocked that world for the Supercross community. One good thing for us here in Indianapolis is they have 3 rounds this year coming to Lucas Oil Stadium. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Hopefully we can go to at least one of them. It's obviously a big question mark as to whether they'll allow fans or not.
As of now, they are.
As of now, they are in limited capacity. So those of you in the Midwest area that's interested in checking it out, check it out. I don't know what the capacity will be. I think it's like 25% or something.
Supercross is usually pretty full there anyways. If you remember from years past, they got a full house.
Yeah, so they might already be sold out for all we know. So I'm looking forward to that. What other news do you guys have?
F1 season opener in Australia looks to be set to be delayed or postponed again.
No surprise there.
The same fun that started off our year of 2020 looks to be repeating itself in 2021.
2021, the sequel.
So, likewise, the St. Pete IndyCar race looks like it is on the slate to be delayed, although not to the season finale like it was in 2020. From the article I read, St. Pete will be delayed about 3 weeks back till after Barber.
Yeah, Barber's kind of in limbo too.
Barber, I saw, might be pushed back 1 week, which will give us a triple header going from Barber as a season opener to St. Pete to Texas. The teams will get a weekend off before they go to the Grand Prix of Indianapolis and then the Indy 500.
Cool. I do have some speculation on that, though. I don't know if it's necessarily pandemic related because they had a race back in October pre-vaccine with fans.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's necessarily pandemic related. I think the idea is that they want to kind of condense the schedule a little bit because I don't know about you guys. When you go like several weeks between races, you kind of start to lose interest or you forget about it. So having more races like on consecutive weekends, I think that's a good move. Kind of keeps your attention and I don't mind it as long as there'll be fans at these races, hopefully, in some capacity. Definitely at St. Pete.
So I'm not going to put my tinfoil hat on, but I'd be kind of shocked if that was a theory, is that it could be something related to the setup time and such as that too. But actually, you're right. Looking at what I've seen from Florida and from Alabama so far, their COVID precautions seem to have been a little more liberal than maybe some of our Midwest states here.
Yeah. Well, the other cool thing, too, is the vaccines are being rolled out. So hopefully by spring, we'll have a decent of those out. So we'll see what happens. But
makes me a little nervous for the big race.
The 500. Aaron, let's not talk about that right now.
Fans will be there, I think, no doubt.
No, never,
But
never
I don't know
assume,
about
never assume,
access
because we
issues, so
assume
I'm
fans would be at the
assuming.
race last
Boy,
year.
aren't you guys just ants at a picnic today?
Yeah, so not cool.
See, other news. Alex Albon, the F1 exile from the Red Bull team, is set to drive in the DTM series for 2021 with Red Bull backing, so he's still part of the Red Bull driver's stable. He just won't be in the Formula One car. Should be interesting to see.
And DTM is the same series that Robert Wickens came from, correct?
Correct. It's the German Touring Car Championship. It's a great series. It's just not F1.
It's not very accessible here in the American market either. I don't know if I've ever actually watched.
Well, they don't race in the United States, so probably not.
No.
I don't think you have to go out of your way to find it. It's not on your local channels, certainly.
So, and then Zach Veach to Vassar Sullivan IMSA's program. Sullivan's IMSA program with Frankie Montencalvo. Frankie Montencalvo.
There you go. Sound it out.
Cool. So that was announced, like an hour ago as of this recording?
A couple hours ago, yeah.
So good for Zach Veach to have a place to land
Yeah.
after losing his IndyCar ride. And
Well, it is confirmed now that he will not be back in IndyCar.
at least not on a full-time schedule.
So
He could be
It's
one
good
of your
that-
choices for
You got to be optimistic for the kid.
your Indy 500 only drivers. I think he'd be certainly a good
yeah,
choice.
I think yeah, for sure.
yeah, I could definitely see him coming to at least the 500. There's a lot of drivers that kind of come out of the woodwork, so to speak, to fill up the field of 33. Do you guys think that there will be more than 33 entries this year?
Absolutely.
I think we're on track right now with everything that's been confirmed. I think we're at like 23 full-time cars, if not more. I think we're up to maybe 28 confirmed for the 500 when you count Montoya and Elio in his part-time deal. You can expect Dry and Reinbold to have their one or two cars like they always do. So we will be at 33, I think, without a problem. And then beyond that, who's willing to take the risk and to get to spend those millions of dollars to possibly be bumped? It'll be interesting to see.
I would like to see another bump day. Did we have one last year? I
Not
can't remember.
in 2020, but 2019, I think we had that spectacular one with Alonso getting bumped.
Yeah, that one. That was. I was there for that. I think. Were we all there for that? That was
Yes.
quite the day. Yeah, I would like to see some bumping again this year for sure. And who knows? Maybe Jimmy Johnson will change his mind too. Although at this point, who knows?
I don't know if Ganassi would have another car available for him this year. for the
Ganassi,
500.
if there's any team that can pull out another car, it's Chip Ganassi.
That yes.
Jimmy Johnson won't have any issues finding a car if he wanted to drive.
No.
He brings too much sponsorship money with his Ally Bank sponsorship.
I mean, I think he wants to do it and he would do it, but I think it's his wife at this point that's not letting him.
Yeah, so probably last of the quick news for the week. This is a much more sad note. Aldo Andretti has recently passed away, so our thoughts go out to the Andretti family. Aldo, as you know or may not know, he was Mario's brother. Fun fact, the pictures for the 1969 Indy 500 with his entry and his front row picture was actually Aldo, because Mario got burned a bit in a crash he had, which destroyed their new car. So they pulled out this 2-year-old Bronner Hawk, which is actually what he qualified the race with, or ran the race with, and ultimately won. But if you go back and see the pictures of the grid, pictures of the drivers on the front row, that's actually Aldo Andretti. So if you did not know that before, you learned something new this week.
And Aldo obviously also raced, and I've heard a lot of, that he was a really good driver, and some people said he was better than Mario, but he just, got injured a lot.
Yeah, so he had a couple of bad crashes that kind of pulled him out of racing pretty much.
Certainly a career that could have been, should have been, because him and Mario traded off the car racing every other weekend when
Yeah.
they first got started. And
If you watch Mario's documentary that they did, one or 2 years ago, when they came over to the United States. Him and his brother got into it together, and that was their
Against
lifelong
their
goal.
parents' wishes too, right? It was
Yeah.
kind of a
Yeah.
secret.
And I believe they had services. I think they're tomorrow, Wednesday. I don't know what the date is, but I think they're at St. Malachy tomorrow in Brownsburg, because he actually lived in Brownsburg, and I believe he actually owns
That's
some
my
business.
hometown.
It's my hometown too.
Yeah, we went to high school together.
Did we? I didn't know
Another
that.
fun fact of the week.
But apparently, I don't even know what I was going to say now. Thank you, Jacob, for distracting me.
His son John Andretti also passed away at the
Yeah.
beginning of this
Yeah.
year, so definitely thoughts out to the Andretti family.
They've had certainly as rough a 2020 as you can get.
Yeah. I guess one good thing was Marco did get the pole, which is one positive. But yeah, I think that everything else that happened definitely overshadowed that to an extent. So our thoughts on behalf of, I'd say, the entire racing community. Definitely thoughts out to the Andretti family.
Yes.
Aaron, I think you have some more bad news.
I do. Another popular driver also passed away. Mr. John Paul Jr. Lost his battle with Huntington's disease. He was born 1960. He just died December 29th, 2020. He started out in sports car racing in 1982 for his dad's team. His dad is John Paul Sr., and they won the 1982 IMSA GT Championship for his dad's team, which was JLP Racing. They won the 1982 Daytona 24 Hours in their class. They won the 12 Hours of Sebring. But something that happened to John Paul Jr., which kind of overshadowed his racing career, was he got lured into his dad's illegal activity, so to speak. He was involved in the drug trade. John Paul Jr. got involved when he was 15 to help his father. And if I'm sure everyone is familiar with who Randy Lanier is, the Winningtons, all those guys were involved with John Paul Sr. as well with the whole drug trade. There was a term that I've heard people use for all the drivers. I forget what it was. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't.
That were involved in drug trade. I have to look it up. But anyway, a lot of teams back then were completely funded by drugs. And, but yeah, so John Paul Jr. got involved when he was 15. He failed to testify for his father. So he was charged with racketeering and was sentenced, I believe, to 5 years in prison, in which he only served 2.5. And it's really sad because, if he would have testified against his father, I'm sure he would have got a lot less prison sentence. But it also interrupted his promising racing career. But the good news is when he got out, I believe, so he went in 1986, May 1986. He attempted to qualify for the Indy 500 in 1989 in a Cosworth. I will note that his first Indy 500 start was 1985, and his best finish was 7th in 1998.
Cool. Another fun fact about John Paul Jr. is, I believe he was the tallest driver ever to qualify for the Indianapolis 500.
How tall was he?
6'5".
Justin Wilson.
Not that tall.
He was 6'3".
Okay.
I pay attention because I'm a little taller myself, so I just want to make sure that I could still hypothetically fit in a race car if I ever get independently wealthy.
I feel like Stefan is way taller than that.
He might be, I don't know, but yeah. So John Paul Jr. He was one of the tall guys, so I was kind of a
6'3",
fan of
never
his too. Even though I was a little kid back when he was racing. I don't know. I guess my gut told me I was destined to be tall like him.
Growing up, I was told I was going to be too tall to be a race car driver too. I think that was my parents' way to get me out of pay, so they didn't have to pay for go-karts and all that stuff.
Well, John Paul Jr. definitely did not let his above average height slow him down at all. So that was kind of the cool thing about him. That
a little bit of history on his father that's kind of interesting, and this is actually something I learned. I knew his father was involved in some legal troubles, but he's actually has disappeared for the past 21, 22 years. his girlfriend that he was dating in 1998. They had a plan to go sail the world, and apparently they did that, and she disappeared, and then he disappeared as well. And he is wanted by the FBI for questioning.
I've heard some rumors there in some of the Philippine islands, because there's hundreds of islands they can hop from if somebody gets too close. And
I've heard Fiji and the Philippines.
Well, hey, if you take a vacation to Fiji, you might bump into John Paul Sr.
Montego Bay, Jamaica as well. And the only charge he has right now is actually he's wanted for parole violation. But they don't have enough evidence to actually charge him with a crime of murder or anything like that. He's just wanted for questioning. But it's definitely really sad. It makes you wonder if, he had any kind of communication with his son.
yeah,
Obviously, he's probably not going to be at his funeral.
be quite the time to show up. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's all I got on John Paul Jr.
It's certainly an interesting career and a life cut short.
Still think they need to make a movie about all the drug activity with racing. There's be a lot of material there.
Certainly be something. Maybe that's
Be a great Netflix special.
Yeah, Netflix, if you're any of Netflix reps are watching this, there's an idea. I think it'd go over pretty well. Look how good Narcos and stuff turned out.
produced by Race 92.
Yeah, we'll produce it for you. At least
That's
we'll be
it.
a resource for information.
Jacob will do your finances.
Sure. I'm sure Netflix could use my help on their finances.
That's what they're doing wrong.
What was that TV
Yeah.
show they did on Scott Tucker?
It was part of a
American
crime
Greed, I
series.
believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they could almost use that too.
Yeah,
Do one of
I
those
think you
episodes.
should make a whole movie.
Yeah,
out of
no,
it.
I agree.
Or like those long form drama TV series.
The Race 92 documentary, The Hunt for John Paul Sr.
Well,
We're actually going to go look for him. That would be a hell of a documentary.
I just want a trip to Fiji.
yeah, that sounds pretty nice,
Jamaica.
especially now that it's really cold. And I forgot what I was going to say. This is the sophomore slump episode. So we're going to take a quick break. We are going to kind of do a little bit of a commercial break.
We just took a break.
We're coming out with some new shirts
Yeah.
for the 24 Hours of Daytona that are more of an endurance racing theme. Yeah, so Aaron, can you tell us a little bit about these new designs that we're coming out with?
Well, so there's going to be 4. One of which is a very generic. First off, we're not associated with any specific organization or anything like that or any track, but they're generic sports car shirts for a 24-hour race that will be occurring in the next couple of weeks. And there's going to be 3 shirts that are David Land exclusives. And I don't know if we can actually really talk about those yet because I don't have approval to actually release them. So I'll have to figure out when we can release them. And if we can, then you will see them soon.
So yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube, at least you get to see the 24-hour shirt. I'm definitely going to be getting one. And if you are listening to this podcast at the time of release, order it like right now.
And where can they go to order these shirts?
Race92.com. That's race, RACE 92.com.
And if you don't like sports car racing, we have plenty of other shirts for you to order, like the one I have on right here, part of the Roberto Guerrero collection.
Shameless plug.
You know what? I'm going to do this. I don't know if I can do this. If what do you say for these few listeners and viewers of the podcast? If they use the promo code podcast10, can we give them a 10% discount?
Sure.
Okay, good.
All right.
I don't know if I could do that. I'm going to do it anyway.
Podcast 10. How do you spell it, Calvin?
If you found this podcast, you can spell podcast.
All right.
Podcast 10.
Can it be
There
used
we
with other promo codes?
That's up to the
That's
company.
I think
up
we
to
can.
the website.
I'm just giving away their profits. I don't care.
We'll do that. We'll do
you
it
can
in
stack
conjunction.
up discount codes?
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you watch David Land's YouTube channel, you'll see that he also has a discount code.
So watch the code. I mean, watch his channel to get the code.
So check out. So that's the shirt I'm wearing is one of his shirts, the authentic David Land shirt. So check out his YouTube channel. You'll get that second discount code. And you can get up to 20% off. That's a hell of a deal.
Black Friday all over.
I know.
Podcast 10, race92.com.
Bam.
All you need to know.
All righty. So should we move on to an actual segment versus just doing another shameless plug?
Sure.
All right. Well, now it's time for this week's Hot Take. The Hot Take is where we kind of ask a question or talk about an idea, and just kind of discuss it, debate it, maybe even fight over it sometimes.
Something maybe a little controversial.
Sometimes controversial. And so this week's hot take, there's not a whole lot going on right now in the motorsports world. So we were kind of talking about things that happened, this past year in 2020. Some of the things that we noticed was IndyCar, NASCAR, IMSA, they had kind of joint race events, weekends, and at the same track. So, for example, the 4th of July weekend, we saw IndyCar and NASCAR competing on the same course on the same weekend. And so kind of the question is, should IndyCar, NASCAR, IMSA, anyone really, should they have more joint race weekends in the future?
Yes.
I mean, there's been a pretty good history of each of these series sharing weekends, whether it's most recently with IMSA and NASCAR sharing the weekend at the Charlotte Roval, like you mentioned, IndyCar and NASCAR at the Brickyard. Before that, IMSA and NASCAR shared a Brickyard weekend here in Indy. And then IndyCar and IMSA have shared Long Beach, Detroit, I think a couple other races throughout their schedule.
And before IMSA was a thing, NASCAR and Grand Am did a lot of stuff together too.
NASCAR, Grand Am, and I think IndyCar was still partnering with the ALMS.
Well, NASCAR owned Grand Am.
Right.
So, yeah.
So there's a precedent that's been in place for this.
Cool. So should we do that more often? The same, less?
I think it's great. The only thing I would be cautious about, or the whole NASCAR, I know like 15 years ago, I believe, IndyCar was trying to do joint weekends with NASCAR, and NASCAR kind of said no. And now NASCAR wants a piece of the pie because they realize IndyCar's coming back. So,
yeah. I mean, well, let's kind of look at it, the pros of this. I mean, as a race fan, it's fantastic.
Yep.
I buy one ticket and I go sit in the grandstand for,
The whole
2-3 days
sun
of
up to sun
racing, watching. I mean, like the Charlotte Roval with the NASCAR IMSA combo package that they had. It was a great day of racing if you were home watching on TV because it was a little wet. But as a fan, I think it's awesome.
Well, then the other thing too is it's more bang for the buck. If you buy tickets for the whole weekend, you could travel to whatever city or wherever the track is and spend the weekend there versus maybe just choosing to stay home since it's only one race and watching it on TV.
Yeah.
So this could pull more fans to the actual track, assuming that, we'll be allowed to go back to the track and watch the races this year and in the future. The other cool thing, too, from the fan perspective, is you get to see other forms of racing like on the same weekend.
Yeah.
Which I think, for me, like I follow mostly IndyCar, but to be able to watch maybe a NASCAR race, too, that same weekend.
Formula One.
Yeah, I don't think Formula One will ever do a joint event with any of these racing series. Or NASCAR. Like, I've never been to a NASCAR race, full disclosure, because, all my resources have gone into going to IndyCar races. So, if they have fans at the...
So you grew up in Brownsburg.
You never went to the Brickyard 400?
10 minutes from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Are you serious right now?
You never went to a NASCAR practice day?
No.
We were there together for the IMSA race back there when they did the 3 hours at the Brickyard on NASCAR weekend.
Yep.
You saw the NASCARs in the garage.
Yeah, I know. But I've never stayed to watch the NASCAR race. I did not grow up in a NASCAR household, and I had to pick and choose with my resources on what I wanted to see, and NASCAR never became an option. And I think with these, what do you call these? Joint race weekends, I can actually go see a NASCAR race at the IMS finally. It's long overdue. I will admit, it's long overdue.
But remember, Jacob, you won't be sitting in the stands because you're going to be taking pictures with all the people that are wearing our shirts.
Yeah, we're gonna be signing autographs.
All three of
Jacob
them.
Smith is.
Oh yeah. No, I think we'll be pretty good. I think we can watch the race without much.
So, anyway, back to the topic at hand here. As a fan, it's great. You get multiple series on the venue for one low ticket price. But
it might be more expensive. I don't know how they divvy up the tickets, but they'll probably give you a deal if you buy tickets for the whole weekend, is what I've seen for other racing.
So the one party that does kind of suffer in that deal is the venues.
Yep.
Instead of having an IndyCar weekend and then a month later they have the NASCAR weekend, and then a month later they have an IMSA weekend, you're combining it all on one ticket, you're not getting 3 weekends worth of revenue. You admittedly are losing the labor of having each individual weekend, the setup time, the track crew, equipment rentals and things, but you are not making 3 times the profit on one weekend.
I'd like to see the
don't think so?
comparisons. I'd love to see the comparison of doing one big weekend versus like 2 smaller weekends.
Well, it could also open up the opportunity to have multiple races on different weekends. Like if you had like 2 or 3 rounds at Indy with different road course or oval configurations. So that could, they could kind of compensate by doing that. Or you have a weekend with IndyCar and NASCAR, then you do a weekend with IndyCar and IMSA or NASCAR and IMSA, so I think tracks could be creative on how they promote their, the tracks and how they want to,
and really,
make their
if you
money.
think about it, it's no different. Like I used to go to like Mid-Ohio all the time when Grand Am was a thing, and they had Grand Am weekends, and they always had like supporting series. So in a way, when there's a NASCAR weekend with IndyCar weekend, one of them is considered. That's kind of tough because they're both. It's kind of the same principle, but these are 2 much bigger series on a much bigger level.
Yeah, it's 2 headliners. You can't say one's a feeder series, one's a
right.
And IMSA and IndyCar have shared Long Beach, for example, continually for the past several years.
Yeah, and the other thing too is if these series kind of converge to one venue, you're guaranteed, even if you don't actually attend the event, the races won't overlap on TV, so you could tune in to more than one race because they won't have races on the same day at the same time. So that's another big advantage of it too.
Another concern on the venue side and the track management is who gets the track time and what capacity level do you have? Because if you talk, let's have a super weekend. You're going to put 40 IMSA teams roughly, 40 NASCAR teams, and 25 IndyCar teams in one track on a weekend.
Yeah, where are they all going to go?
IndyCar, when they did their doubleheader weekend, at the Brickyard with no fans, so no cars to park, no people in the way, all the IndyCar teams were forced to work out of their transporters and tents. They were not allowed in the garage area at all. NASCAR and Xfinity shared the Formula One garages and the Gasoline Alley garages, respectively.
What?
Yeah.
No, I think IndyCar should have first dibs on the garages because it's the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. This is where IndyCar was born.
Well, there's also Formula One garages and normal garages too.
It was the Brickyard weekend, though. Brickyard had the rights to that. They let IndyCar join their weekend.
NASCAR was also
If it's just, I know, but they had nationwide I think the nationwide were in the regular garages.
Aaron, it hasn't been nationwide for several years.
Well, what is it? Xfinity. Thank you.
It changes I don't even know.
Busch.
It's the Winston Cup Series. So yeah, I think capacity is a concern because if they had fans, where are the fans going to park? You're going to park all the way out.
I don't think you have
lot.
that problem in Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But
Not there, but
smaller venue, absolutely, or it's a street course like Long Beach.
Well, that's why you want to do joint weekends
so,
like that.
And then say we do get all of these teams. We find a place for every IndyCar team, every NASCAR team, every Xfinity team, every IMSA team. What you're going to then throw out are all of the feeder series with the young kids and talent that make up those ladder series, the USF 2000 cars, the Pro Mazda cars, the Indy Lights. There's no room for them. And even if you could park them there, they are not going to find track time to run, 2 or 3 practice sessions, a qualifying session, and 2 or 3 races.
So that's the other issue too is, each series is going to have a shorter, more condensed schedule. They're not going to have as much track time as they probably normally would. The feeder series will kind of get pushed out of the picture, which is not good. If you're an Indy Lights driver trying to make a name for yourself and get to the big leagues, and you can't really compete at that venue, it also hurts the feeder series too because, if it's an IndyCar only weekend, you get to watch, Indy Lights too. Well, in the past you did, but
And to me,
not this year.
nope,
you
not
talk
this
about,
year.
as a deal for the fan, you get to watch all these superstar series where you combine NASCAR and IndyCar. But
Right.
if you go to the Indy Grand Prix, is a great example on a normal year where there is almost racing activity constantly throughout the weekend with, I think USF 2000 runs 3 races. The Indy Pro 2000 runs 2 or 3 the same weekend. Indy Lights has 2 races in a doubleheader weekend. So there is almost always somebody on track. That's not to count some of the other series they bring out. Some they'll bring out some vintage cars and things like that. All that stuff goes out the window if you do these combined events.
And I think they'll kind of get in the routine of being a little quicker with the setup, set down, if they have to make room for other. It's kind of like World of Outlaws. I don't know. You guys probably haven't been to World of Outlaws race, but
That's another one on the list.
right. But if see with them, they pull their haulers in at like 3 or 4 p.m.
Right.
They unload the car. They do practice laps of like 5 or shakedown laps, whatever they call them. And then they race, and they're done about 10:30 or 11. And then they move on to the next city and do the same.
Well, didn't NASCAR kind of do that this year with no practice, no
Yeah,
qualifying?
and they race during the week, so yeah, definitely.
But you still need, at these levels, at 240 miles an hour going into turn 1.
It's a lot different than...
You need that time on the setup pan to make sure things are square. You can't just give it the good old boy approach.
Right, and the World of Outlaws, they definitely do that. And I think most of those teams only have about 3 or 4 guys per car, so big difference.
Yeah.
The other issue, too, the races could be shorter,
And then that kind of defeats the purpose of being an action-packed, fun event.
Yeah, if everything becomes a sprint race because you can't have a whole day set up for just the IndyCar race.
I'm all for shorter races once in a while, but...
If that becomes the norm, that wouldn't be
But,
ideal.
when NASCAR races at Pocono and the race is, like 4 hours long?
Yeah, those are
I'd be
cases
fine
where
with a shorter
you
race.
could trim some of those down. But then, like the Harvest Grand Prix at the Speedway this year, I think we were all kind of in agreement that 5 more laps would have made a very different race.
At least for the second race, because the second race, I think it was 10 laps shorter than the first race.
So you're kind of just begging them for a little bit more, a little bit more.
Were you begging for a little more than the Indy 500?
I mean,
that's going to be another hot take for another time.
That one's got to be 500 miles. I can't.
No.
Would I have loved to see a green
take.
flag restart at the 500? Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah.
We're gonna. I need to write that down. That's going to be a hot take in the future.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Stay listening to the podcast, and you'll.
You're welcome,
You'll have
Jacob.
an interesting hot take. And then the other thing too is there such thing as too much of a good thing? Like you kind of get overwhelmed, and you just kind of, if the IndyCar race, NASCAR race, IMSA race, and there's all these different races going on. At the end of the weekend, are you going to remember all of it if it's too much to take in?
Sure. I think it turns into that same thing like you're doing with your money currently. You kind of pick and choose. Okay, I really care about watching the IndyCar race, but the Xfinity race, I don't have as much interest in. I'm going to only pay some attention to.
So maybe those are the races that you kind of watch them to kind of see what it's all about, but you're also kind of doing other stuff like.
I mean, if you don't remember them, do you remember any of your college parties you went to back in the day?
I do. There were some good ones.
Well, as long as you remember.
Or if you're in a situation like the Harvest Grand Prix this year where they had the SRO Endurance Challenge that was on track at the same time, not same time as the IndyCar, but before as kind of a feeder series.
That would make an
Support
interesting
series.
race, same time.
They were out there, and I know at least me personally, it was so cold out there, it didn't matter what was on track. I was ready to get the IndyCar race over with so I could go home.
Yeah.
Well, that's more of a weather thing.
Right, but if you get bad weather,
You got to take that in consideration.
you're going to, that benefit of being in front of new fans that might experience your new series, they're not going to care.
Okay, so then a follow-up question that's kind of elaborating on the hot take. Would you rather have an IndyCar doubleheader weekend or a joint weekend where one day is an IndyCar race and one day is a NASCAR race?
That's a good question. Because my first thought is it doesn't matter. I would take both.
I'd say different days.
Because, for me, if it was an option to go to the Harvest GP, I'd pick one race or the other. I wouldn't go to both. But if one day was the IndyCar race and the other day was a NASCAR race,
You're going to go to the IndyCar race because you're an IndyCar fan.
well, but if I'm going to be in town anyways,
You're going to go to both.
I might be more willing to upgrade to the whole weekend.
But what if you can't
pass.
afford both days?
Well, then that's when you have to make that tough decision.
See, and that's where I think I would be the exact opposite, actually. Like for the Harvest Grand Prix, the IndyCar doubleheader, I went to both races, but I did not go to the sports car race on Sunday because it was another ticket, and it didn't interest me the same way.
I mean, if they do the races on different days, I mean, I think in the long run, they're going to make more money. And if the track's going to be open those days anyway.
It's another ticket they can sell, but
Right.
I know, at least me personally, I don't think I would go to both an IndyCar and a NASCAR race.
On different days?
If they were the same day, I would sit and absolutely watch it, but I don't think I would always go out my way to buy a separate
I feel like
ticket.
it'd be more apt to go if they were separate days. I don't know.
That might be one where I'm outvoted here, but it's the priority of, the same reason Jacob's never been to a Brickyard 400 because of the resources, the money, the time.
And I will agree, it's not the best NASCAR race to go to. And that's another thing. If you have IndyCar, NASCAR race on the same day,
It really depends on where the race is, too.
Indianapolis Motor Speedway around the oval, you're going to leave halfway through the NASCAR race.
I've sat through it, but then, to me, if you did a...
Sounds very enthusiastic, Calvin.
I have to.
There's a reason they're running it on the road course this
I
year.
fell asleep.
So they're not racing on the oval at all this
The
year.
Brickyard 400 is the road course.
Ooh, I don't. It's not as much of a tradition. Like if they did that with the Indianapolis 500, people would burn down the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Oh, absolutely.
But the Brickyard 400.
They
doesn't have
can't use the
same
infield
legacy.
for the 500. That's where all the drunk fans are.
Yeah, that too. You have a good point. Where were we? So yeah, I think that's the other thing I kind of want to bring back something I brought up at the beginning when I was giving the news about the Supercross series. They're having 3 races come here to Indianapolis. I'm probably just going to go to one and then watch the other 2 on TV, just because it costs money. So it's kind of a
I
don't know.
on TV anymore costs money too. Or
know.
is it
Well,
on regular?
The more we talk about this whole debate, though, should we have more of these super weekends? The more inclined I am to say no.
really. So you're kind of changing your mind on these.
It depends on the track and the circumstances.
The more we talk about,
in the series.
there's so many what ifs, but
IMSA, IndyCar, 100%.
maybe I can't even.
IMSA
guarantee-
Honestly, there's been a lot of IndyCar races where I didn't even know there was an IMSA race like the next day.
Right, and I think me personally, I would rather pay. If I'm going to spend $60 for the race ticket for the IndyCar race, I'd rather spend $15 to go to qualifying and practice the day before. I am probably not likely to spend $60 to go to practice, qualifying, and an IMSA race the day before. I'd rather spend my $60 3 months later and go to, Road America and see IMSA there.
Right. But IMSA's probably getting more people going to those races than they would if it was just them.
Yeah, but how many of them actually stick around to watch the IMSA race in that same breath?
That's
Well,
true.
if they race before IndyCar, a lot of them are going to be there.
Yeah, so it's kind of, but then,
Definitely don't have them race after IndyCar.
right.
I think the selling point for these super weekends is, let's say that us living in Indianapolis want to fly out to Long Beach. I wouldn't mind saying to watch all the racing I can, because I know I probably won't be back at Long Beach next year. It's kind of a bucket list race.
Yeah.
To make that kind of travel, it's quite a commitment. It's not something I could probably afford to do every year.
Well,
So you kinda
especially
save up and go all out for 1 year.
especially this year with COVID, if you're trying to go somewhere like that, this is not the best time
Let's
to plan
not
it.
use that as part. Let's pretend that COVID doesn't exist, and this is just a hypothetical.
But it is going to hurt series, though, because
Well, everyone's hurting right now, Aaron. But this is a hypothetical. We're not going to take the pandemic into account, because
This is
doesn't-
just a moving forward theoretical approach.
yeah. So, yeah, now you guys have me really wondering now how beneficial or how.
I think it's fun on the TV side of things, but I can't even sit all day. I can't spend all Sundays watching 3 races happen either.
Yeah, that's true too.
So I don't think it's as I take back my first answer. I don't think we need more of these weekends.
But maybe have a few
I think once
For a
in a
spe-
while
like,
it's
like-
okay.
4th of July weekend.
yeah, I think special circumstances like that is great.
I think as a special treat, not a regular thing.
Okay, so I think so you think we should not have more of these joint events?
I don't think we should add more. No, I think you keep your IMSA IndyCar doubleheaders at Long Beach, Detroit. I think that's all of them.
I'd be okay
Basically
with
the major events that they currently do.
I'd be okay with IndyCar doing Charlotte Roval too.
That'd
Yeah.
be kind of cool.
But would you rather see them do Charlotte Roval by themselves or on the same weekend with everybody else where IndyCar gets one practice session, one qualifying, one race, and that's it?
I would build up a hype for the weekend, but I don't think they would do it by themselves, just because Charlotte is a NASCAR track.
It is, but Team Penske's based out of Charlotte there too, including their IndyCar operation.
Yeah, so I guess it'd be possible.
That I wouldn't mind seeing the Indy cars run at the Charlotte Roval.
I mean, they did. Joseph Newgarden did a test.
Well,
It was an
could-
exhibition.
Maybe that's like a 2022.
He was
potential.
running
Drove the car
So
on the track. There you go.
So, Aaron, what do you think? Should we have more of these? Less? The same?
Same amount. You can add one more in there, and I'd be okay with it.
But not like every single week.
No.
Okay. And I think I agree with you guys. So I think this is our first hot take where we all agree. As we discussed it, I think we're kind of changing our minds as we kind of weigh our options here.
You talked me out of it.
Yeah, I have a way of doing that. I think the Pitstop Power Hour thinks that we should not have more of these super weekends. We enjoy the ones that we have, but I don't think that we should necessarily add more to the schedules for all of these series. I think there's a such thing as too much of a good thing, and that's the stance that we're going to take on this.
Yeah.
And let us know your thoughts. And
Yeah.
if someone wants to
Yeah.
let us know their thoughts, how would they do that, Jacob?
You can visit the Race 92 Instagram. The Pitstop Power Hour kind of runs through the Race 92 Instagram.
And what's our username? Race 92 Racing.
Yes.
You can leave a comment on the YouTube video.
I was just quizzing you, Aaron. I was just making
Yeah,
sure you
sure.
remembered.
On your podcast subscription, wherever you're listening to this, leave a comment there as well.
Quizzing me while I'm quizzing you.
Leave a comment on the YouTube video what your take is on the hot take this week, and let's keep the debate going.
All right.
All right, so segment 2, we figured since we're going to be in a sophomore slump anyways, might as well try a new segment and see what happens. Might as well. So this next segment is called Technical Talk with Calvin Veen. So amongst us, Calvin was the only one to be able to finish engineering school, and is therefore the most qualified and most knowledgeable about the technical aspects of racing. Yes, you are.
More than us.
Do what?
More than us.
Yeah, definitely more than us. We talk, not just us, but any motorsports media is usually solely focused on the drivers or the actual races themselves. So we figured maybe take a little bit of time and talk about more of the technical component that kind of goes into these cars, the tracks, or kind of more of the science or engineering or mechanical side of things.
All right. So, Jacob, you had a question for me for this week.
Yeah, so I was freezing my ass off. It's winter now, obviously, and here in Indiana, as well as the rest of the Midwest and further north, it's pretty darn cold. And I was wondering, how does colder temperatures, or maybe even temperatures in general, but we're going to focus more on colder temperatures, how do they affect the performance of the car?
Well,
So let's start with the engine. What does cold air do to an engine? Obviously, we're going to be focused more towards race cars, but maybe some of it could apply to your daily driver too.
well, certainly it will have an influence. To take this out, there's the practical world and the world of theory. So we're going to go live into the world of theory, if you will. There you go.
All right.
Ooh.
Put on your theoretical hats
Fancy.
here. So your cold air is going to be more dense air. It's going to be closer packed together. It's going to be heavier, if you will.
So basically, so the physics, the air molecules, as it gets colder, kind of condense. That's why water turns into ice.
You're going to have more air in the same space.
Was that right?
More dense air.
Or is there something else that turns water into ice?
Yeah, the temperature, yeah.
Okay. Well, the air thickens up.
So more dense air.
Quick question. Is that why the wind feels more intense in the winter, or is it just because it's cold?
Probably a bit of both there.
Okay, cool. Fun fact. We're learning so much this week, guys.
You are.
I haven't even said a thing yet.
We'll keep going. I keep interrupting.
So more dense air is going to mean more air goes into the engine. Makes sense, right?
Yes.
Yep.
So we assume that we keep our air-fuel ratio perfectly uniform no matter what the air density is. That means more air and fuel are burned, which is going to give you more power. So colder gives you a chance to make more engine power.
does the colder air affect the engine's ability to, like, say the outside of the engine is going to be a lot colder? Can that affect? So you can't just start the engine cold and just like give it hell.
Certainly, there's the stress of the material based on the temperature changes.
So I guess that's the question: is does it put a higher stress on the material?
There is going to be, if you go from absolutely cold to screaming hot, anything's going to fail like that.
Okay.
It'll be more stress, and you'll get fewer cycles till it fails ultimately.
And this may be a dumb question, but you're the technical person here. Is there a way to make an engine compatible for the cold and like the cold only?
Yeah, they do that. Actually,
Like rally racing, probably.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot.
I bet I can guarantee you snowmobiles are designed for cold weather.
yeah. Did you guys know the gas stations where you fill up your cars every day? During the winter, they use a different blend of gasoline because it helps your engine start in the cold temperatures.
Did not know
Wow,
that.
neat fact.
So in the summer, they have basically a summer blend of gasoline, and then as the temperatures get colder, different regions. So the same gas they're pumping down in Texas, they are not pumping up in New York.
Interesting. So kind of moving on from the engines, now we kind of understand what the colder air can do to an engine. And then obviously the reverse is for warmer air. But we're kind of used to warmer air for racing. So I was just, the question here is how cold air. But aerodynamics. So here's kind of the flip side to
Right.
everything.
So air density also plays effects in your aerodynamics. The air is heavier. It's more that the car has to essentially cut through. So you'll get a little bit more downforce, but you also get more drag. So any theoretical benefits you get from the added power, you are going to lose on drag. The other downside of this cold temperature is you're probably going to end up burning more fuel because there's more air, more fuel needs to go in to compensate. So ultimately, cold temperatures are probably not exactly what you want. There's probably a happy medium somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, but this is a theoretical of if we wanted to go run an IndyCar race right now and it's 25 degrees outside.
You'll want cold air going into the engine, but you'll want probably a thinner level of air for your aerodynamics. It's kind of a trade-off because you want what force level then?
Yeah.
I can't help but think about the, and I'm sure both of you have seen this, the video they did with Travis Pastrana, Alexander Rossi, and I think it was Greg Duffy on the motorcycle.
Yeah. The
And-
keys of the racetrack one?
Yeah, and Rossi was on the track, and it was like, I think it was below 20 that day.
There was snow on the ground.
Wow.
He was also not doing 240 miles an hour into turn
No.
one.
He was drifting through the road course, so it was kind of cool.
It was cool, but it was not efficient in any way.
So, moving on. So now we know so you have more drag. So even with your daily driver, you're probably not getting as good a fuel mileage
Right.
during the winter as you are in the summer. And then tires. Obviously, tires are going to be colder. It's going to take longer to get them up to temperature.
Yeah.
So hypothetically, if you were to do a race in the winter, you would want a softer tire compound probably.
You'd want something that could get up to temperature easier.
So a softer compound.
In theory, yeah.
In theory. I don't know if you guys remember this, but the 1992 Indy 500 was one of the coldest Indy 500s on record. And those guys, from what I understand, had a really hard time getting their tires up to temp because those tires were designed for summer weather. And it was damn near like winter weather that day.
Remember, Jacob, we were there, so we should remember this.
You guys were warm and cozy and had no idea what was going on.
But that was also one of the contributing factors as to why there were so many cautions that year is drivers struggled getting their tires going and thus would crash, especially with those cars in those days. They had more power than today's Indy cars. And sounds like they had a lot more turbo lag than what they have nowadays. So when that turbo would kick in, if they're on a yellow, warm-up lap, that could, like Roberto Guerrero coming around for the green flag, trying to warm his tires up, once that turbo kicks in, it just lights up the rear tires.
Yeah. So cold temperatures, you're going to lose that tire grip.
So that's part of setting up the car is you have to compensate for thicker air, more power, and colder tires.
So you're in terms of car setup, you're going to, like I said, focus on your mechanical grip, your aero grip. So the added benefits that we talk about, the theory world of how the engine performs, how it reacts, that's kind of doesn't matter so much as just making sure the car sticks to the racetrack. As of right now, IndyCar has, I believe it's a 50-50 rule, where the ambient temperature needs to be above 50, the track temperature needs to be above 50, and combined they have to be above like 90 or something. Just because of the safety factor of it all. There's no grip. There's nothing of value to learn at those cold temperatures.
Yeah, this is the theoretical world.
Theory.
So that's why we don't have IndyCar races in the winter. And from the fan perspective and from probably the team's perspective and driver's perspectives, that would be a pretty miserable experience too.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, the teams have been working pretty hard. They deserve some time off for Christmas to see their family.
Yes, absolutely.
But that's another thing is there's no racing going on right now. So sometimes you start to wonder, what if we had a race in the middle of the winter?
Front wings on an IndyCar do not make very good snowplows.
But rest assured, next weekend, Supercross season begins, so we'll have some form of racing to tune into. Those of you listening or watching, if you have not seen a Supercross race or a motocross race, I definitely recommend checking it out. It's not like there's any other races going on. So what have you got to lose? It's Saturday night. I believe this round's in Houston, but don't quote me on that. So I think... So I hope you guys all enjoyed learning something new with Technical Talk with Calvin Veen. Now we're going to move on to everyone's favorite. Aaron, take it away.
Now it's time for the Pit Stop Challenge. Jacob's late.
I didn't even think about that until Calvin pressed it for me.
So as everyone knows, the average pit stop takes between 8 to 10 seconds in IndyCar. So we have devised possibly 3 questions a week that we will be asking Jacob and Calvin, and they have 10 seconds to answer, but really, whoever answers the question correctly will get the point.
Because we probably won't get it in 10 seconds.
So right now, who is leading?
I believe I'm leading with 1 point from last week's episode. So if you haven't seen that episode, go ahead and go check it out. Watch me win. Definitely a proud moment for me. One of the proudest
This is the
moments
part
of
of
my
the
life.
show where I thank Aaron for giving me the question answers in advance.
All right, Aaron. Well, let's take it away. Let's get started.
What year was the Indianapolis Motor Speedway fully paved?
1962. 1961, they
Yes.
still had the full yard of bricks.
61, it was paved. I think it was after the race.
Was it?
Either way, Jacob gets the answer.
Yeah.
Well, I do know the last Indy 500 with the entire main straightaway with the entire front.
So they probably paved right
Entire
after
main
that.
straightaway was all bricks that year. And then they paved it somewhere between that race and the 1962
Do you know when
500.
they paved the... This isn't a question. I'm curious. Do you know when they paved the turns?
Sometime before then?
I think like the 50s.
Okay.
All right, we're ready for question number 2.
Yeah.
I think I'm ready.
It's Danica.
Who was the first Unser to drive in the Indy 500?
Jerry Unser.
Good job. I think Jacob automatically wins.
I'll give a third question just for fun.
Sure. This is kind of going off of the last one. How many Unsers have driven in the Indy 500? And since this doesn't matter, if you want to name them all off, we can do that as well.
What if we went back and forth?
Can we do bonus points? Can we do a bonus point if you can tell me an Unser who attempted to qualify for the race that did not?
Either Johnny or Robbie Unser.
They both made the race.
Oh.
This one I did not know.
I'm running out of Unsers.
It was Louis Unser, and I don't even know how he's related.
That's more than I was going to guess. I was going to...
I didn't even know. I didn't even realize.
Do you know how many Unsers have driven in the Indy 500?
So we have Jerry Unser. We then move on to Bobby Unser,
Al and Al Jr.
Al and Al Jr., Johnny and Robbie.
There you go. That's your 6.
The Unser family.
I was going to say 5, so 6 was, yeah, close guess.
So who was Louis Unser?
We're going to find out. While we're still trying to
Now
film a
is where we
podcast.
learn things with Aaron.
We're trying to record a podcast. Aaron's going to Google it.
And then you had...
Oh, so Louis Unser was Jerry Unser's brother. Yes, they were brothers, and then Jerry Unser was the father of Bobby and Al Sr.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go.
And then you had Al Unser the third, who was a Indy Lights driver and up and coming.
Yeah,
And he was. There was a lot of rumor that he was going to try to drive in the 500. Obviously,
Never did get the
he
chance.
was in Indy Lights, so
Yeah, he did Indy Lights for several years, and
Is there potential that he could still?
I think
he's born 1982. So I mean, he.
there's always a chance. You never say
Yeah,
never.
but
Yeah.
I don't think he's been racing.
I think he's been out of racing, and
All right. Well,
incredible racing dynasty nonetheless.
absolutely. And then for those of you listening and watching, we also have a Bobby Unser collection, speaking of the Unser family, at race92.com. I definitely encourage you to go check that out. Those are some of our...
officially endorsed by the man himself.
Yep.
For those of you that are playing the shameless plug drinking game, take another shot.
Yeah. Calvin, I think we just stumbled on something. I'd also like to bring up our Roberto Guerrero collection. Take another shot. Drink.
And apparently, I touch my face a lot. I was told by someone. You know who you are. So
Gabby.
no, actually not. So take another drink now.
So you take a drink every time Aaron touches his face, or maybe any one of us for that matter, and then you take a shot every time we plug Race 92.
And for those of you that don't have alcohol poisoning, thanks for listening.
All right. Some quick news to kind of wrap it up. There is a...
I'll do it since I added it.
Sounds good.
So for those of you who live in the Indy area or racing fans,
Or want to come visit the Indy area.
most of us race fans, I guess Jacob's not really included because he doesn't really collect memorabilia, but me and Calvin collect
I
memorabilia.
do, sometimes.
It depends on what it is, I guess. If it's alcohol memorabilia that involves
yeah.
alcohol.
No, I got some cool stuff. I got a collection.
Do you? I've never seen it. I need to see it. But anyway, there's a racing memorabilia show at the Delara factory on Friday, January 15th and Saturday, January 16th. Show hours are 5 to 8 p.m. on Friday, January 15th and 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturday, January 16th
That's at the Delara factory in downtown Speedway.
on Main Street.
Okay. Right near
Be
the
there.
Speedway.
Or be square.
Should be cool.
Or you're
I'll be
just
there at some
not
point.
Cool.
Calvin
So yeah,
probably will.
if you go on Saturday, go to the memorabilia show 9 to 3, and then go home and tune into the Supercross race that night. I think we just planned out everyone's weekend for next weekend.
Sorry, dear, I can't do the laundry or clean the house. I've got...
Yep. You now have an excuse to get out of the house and have something to do. Excuses to not do chores. All right. Well, this was our sophomore slump episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I think that's it. I don't have anything else. Do you guys have anything else?
Nothing important.
No. All right. Well, that wraps up this week for the Pitstop Power Hour presented by Race 92. If you like the show, please rate and subscribe. And if you didn't, well, let's just pretend this never happened.
Like a bad Tinder date.
Sound good? For the rest of you, we'll see you next week.